The Higher Education Minister, Dr. Nobuhle Ngabane, has come under fire from opposition parties following her presentation to the National Council of Provinces. The Democratic Alliance, the EFF and the MK Party have all rejected her budget, citing corruption, poor leadership and a failure to meet the needs of students. Yesterday, the NCOP held a hybrid plenary for the policy debate on a Budget Vote 17. But what is the Budget Vote and how does it work? For more on this, we speak to Parliamentary Budget Office Executive Director, Professor Dumisani Jantjies. Prof, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. So the Constitution expects of a Parliament to actively engage in the process of budgeting. But speak to us about the process and how that process unfolds after the Minister has delivered his budget, the Finance Minister, that is.
Thank you so much, Aldon, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you the process. I think we all know by now that the houses have adopted the fiscal framework and the National Assembly has also adopted the division of revenue. So now what happens after division of revenue, each department together with its entities have to present the structural plan, the annual performance plan and the budget allocation for the year and update the committee. And that report has to be given to the functional committees, and such committees have to consider and report to the House on that departmental budget vote, which is exactly what you say happened yesterday, where departments will present its vote, and that vote is discussed in the committee, and the committee makes a report to the House in terms of what is the committee's conclusion and deliberations on that vote.
Okay.
So we are at that stage, at this stage, where the budget votes are being considered by the National Assembly and the NCOP, as you have said earlier on. And that obviously, we build up towards appropriations bill, which is total list of all the votes which has been allocated in line with the division of revenue.
Yep.
Well. Thanks.
Then speak to us about what happens in terms of the voting. We have, as we've indicated, with the fallout, of course, with the government of national unity or some disagreements amongst the various political parties, the DA saying that they won't be supporting certain budgets being presented by certain ministers or certain departments. But explain to us, when it comes to the voting itself, what happens?
I'm not sure which part, but I'm excited to look at both the committee and the House.
Sure.
Obviously, the report has to be taken to the House by the committee after considering the vote, after considering the budget vote by the department and its entities, and that report has to be tabled to the House. And to understand the rules, the committee needs 51 plus for the report to majority to be tabled in the House. However, even if there are no majority, the report still have to be tabled in the House, and in the case of the majority, the committee will explain the situation and what happened and all of that. And then that report has to be tabled in the House, and the House will use the rules to consider the report, which it becomes more political discussions in the House itself in dealing with the vote as it be coming from the committee itself.
Yep.
So the discussion will now ensue in the House in terms of debate and what the House decide politically in terms of the rules set out for the House itself there.
So does it mean that the committee may come to a decision as they present their report to the House that there are political parties that are objecting to the budget that has been presented, but then the House itself could come to a different conclusion based on how it votes?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. The committee is required to send the report as saying what the decision discussions, but that report, it might not have majority, might not agreement or consensus, whichever way you look at it, but that report still have to go to the House, and the House has to use the rules politically to deal with the report. It may as well be coming out different outcomes. But of course, there are rules on how the voting takes place. But what I'm saying, the process is exactly to say the committee will decide on the report and table the report as required by law, by the rules, and the House itself would have to debate and come up to a conclusion based on the report itself. So yes, it could be that the debate in the House are different from the one in the committee itself.
All right. And once the report is now before the House, the debate takes place and eventually it comes down to a vote, and you spoke about the 50 plus 1. What happens if there is no 50 plus 1?
I mean, earlier on I was referring to 50+1 in the committee itself before the report goes
Okay.
there. I think also just take a quick step back. We also have to recognize this a new area terrain where they still have to be discussion. But I understand the rules does make provisions in terms of how the House will deal with the rules in case there are no consensus. I think for me, what's important to also clarify is the broader implications for the appropriations that these are separate processes. So the House may still have to do its role in dealing with the budget vote itself, and the rules would allow the discussion like any other votings in many laws or many processes where there are not consensus. The House rules makes provisions for how to deal with that situation when it pertains in that situation.
Yeah, then speak to us about the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act, the Act granting Parliament the authority to amend the overall budget and the budgets of specific national government departments and entities.
Yes, now that we've done with the Division of Revenue, what is now before Parliament, the National Assembly at stage, is when both in the National Council committees, is the appropriations bill. And that appropriations bill does recognize that there has to be separate votes in terms of, the minister and the entity present those votes and report, as I was saying, section 1C there does provide details there. But I think to clarify, we have different functional committees. You've got appropriations committees. So at this stage, the Act gives appropriations committee the authority to deal with amendments of the appropriations bill. So, for example, let's say the Committee on Sports wants to make proposed changes or make recommendations on the condition to be set on the specific vote, they have to do that through the appropriations committee. Say, chairperson of a committee or the committee, as a standing committee of sports or standing committee of sports, we have recommended this portfolio committee. We have recommended these changes or these recommendations for this particular vote, and only then the committee will take that and entertain that. But also, once the committee of appropriations have agreed or considered that, and then only then such amendments, will be sent to the minister and the cabinet member, Minister of Finance in this regard, and a cabinet member who's affected by such amendments or multiple them. And once that they've given time to respond to such proposed amendments, it could as well be a specific vote or the entire appropriations bill or the subdivisions in the vote or whichever proposed amendments. But whatever amendments or changes are made has to be within the adopted Division of Revenue and adopt a fiscal framework. And the Minister, Finance and Minister affected by the recommendations by the committee, given time to respond to that, 10 days. And once that they've responded, the Committee on Appropriations still has to do the report on appropriations table to the House in terms of the Money Bills Act in that regard. And the House will have to entertain the report and in line with the rules of the House there.
Yeah, and just finally, Prof, considering the delay in the passing, of course, of the national budget that was presented by the minister, now speaking about the fiscal framework, are there any concerns for the budget, for the Parliamentary Budget Office, in terms of how the processes have flowed now, and concerns perhaps maybe around meeting the required deadlines?
And I think at this stage you'd see that everything has fallen into line. There's a timeline for the appropriations bill, which is the last instrument, which in the National Assembly set for the 23rd of this month, and the National Council probably the week after that. I think at this stage things seem to be going quite smoothly, and we I spoke to the chairpersons of the appropriations earlier, both of them for both houses, just to let us know. But I think for me, the issue that obviously raised a bit of anxiety is the current debate around the votes. I'm a bit concerned about that shouldn't create confusion and uncertainties because those are the separate process in the understanding of the law, whereby the budget votes have to go ahead and the appropriations bill has to go in parallel to that. But of course, they fit into each other. And I think it's important that uncertainty or the new area doesn't create anxiety or create confusion what should happen. The Act does state clearly that appropriations bill has to be considered as a whole. And if there are going to be amendments or proposed amendments, it has to go through that appropriations committee in terms of the law. And again, have to consider there would be oversight issues that would come with the committee's votes. And just a quick point, there was a similar situation in 2023 where a committee on tourism had actually proposed some of the recommendations around the Department of Tourism and the entity there. And advice we gave there was to say, look, that has to go through appropriations committee, and the timing matters as well. And I think for me, that's just only concern I have, that there shouldn't be any uncertainty and clarity, as I've seen even yesterday discussions. There shouldn't be that. The rules and the Act does provide clear process in how that should unfold.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate the clarity there. Professor Dumisani Jantjies is the Parliamentary Budget Office